The nurse was adjusting my IV when I grabbed her arm and said, "Where is it? Where's the air purifier my son brought me?" She looked at me the way people look at someone they feel sorry for. Then she said 4 words I'll never forget. "Sir, it was poisoning you." My name is Walter Crane. I'm 69 years old. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the city of Columbus, Ohio, designing the bridges and drainage systems that most people drive over without a second thought. I know how things are built. I know how they fail. I've spent my whole career figuring out why structures collapse. I just never thought I'd have to apply that knowledge to my own family. But here I am, and I need to tell you what happened. Let me take you back to last Thanksgiving. My son Elliot and his wife Diane drove up from Nashville with their 2 kids. Elliot is 43 now. He works in commercial real estate, the kind where you buy distressed properties, flip them, and sell fast. He's always been good with numbers, better with money than with people. He married Diane 11 years ago. She's sharp, organized, the kind of woman who sends color-coded itineraries for family vacations. I never had a problem with her exactly, but I always felt like when she looked at me, she was calculating something. My wife Carol passed away 2 years before that Thanksgiving. Ovarian cancer. We'd been married 44 years. She was the kind of woman who remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every little thing that mattered to people. When she died, the house got very quiet very fast. I didn't know how loud silence could be until I was living alone in a 4-bedroom colonial in Westerville, with nothing but her reading glasses still on the nightstand and her handwriting on the grocery list still stuck to the fridge. I kept that grocery list for 8 months. I don't know why. Maybe because it was the last thing she wrote. That Thanksgiving, after dinner, after the kids had gone upstairs to watch something on their tablets, Elliot sat down next to me on the couch and got that look he gets. The one where he's about to tell you something he's already decided. "Dad," he said, "Diane and I have been talking. We're worried about you. You've been alone up here too long." I told him I was fine. I always told him I was fine. He went out to his car and brought in a box, medium size, wrapped in brown paper, professional looking. Inside was an air purifier, one of those high-end tower models, white and sleek, with a small digital display and a built-in scent diffuser. "It's a smart unit," Diane said, leaning in from the doorway. "We can monitor the air quality remotely. It syncs to an app on Elliot's phone. If anything reads off carbon monoxide, particulates, anything, we'll know right away. And it releases a calming aromatherapy blend at night, lavender and eucalyptus. It'll help you sleep." I looked at my son. He looked back at me with those eyes that look exactly like his mother's. "Please, Dan, just try it. For us." What was I going to say? I plugged it in that night in the living room, right next to my armchair where I read. It hummed quietly, smelled faintly of lavender. I fell asleep in that chair around 9 and didn't wake up until almost midnight. I can't remember the last time I'd slept that hard. I should have thought about that more. I didn't. January came. Columbus in January is gray and brutal, the kind of cold that gets in your joints and stays there. I stayed inside mostly. The purifier ran all day and all night. I started looking forward to the evenings when the lavender scent kicked in. It felt like something was finally taking care of me. Then February. I started getting headaches, not sharp ones. Dull pressure behind my eyes and across my forehead like my skull was slowly tightening. I'd never been prone to headaches. Carol used to say I had the constitution of a mule, but suddenly I was reaching for ibuprofen 3 or 4 times a week. I mentioned it to Elliot on the phone. He sounded concerned. "The app shows your room's been running warm at night, Dad. Are you sleeping okay? Drinking enough water?" I said I was. I wasn't actually. I'd been waking up most nights around 2 or 3, heart going fast, That specific kind of disoriented where you don't know for a moment where you are. But I didn't want to worry him. That was my first mistake. March, the fatigue hit. I don't mean the normal tired of a man my age who doesn't sleep well. I mean the kind of fatigue where you sit down to read the paper and realize 40 minutes later you've been staring at the same paragraph. The kind where walking to the mailbox feels like something to recover from. I'd been planning to finally clean out Carol's studio. She painted, watercolors mostly, landscapes and birds, and I couldn't even make myself open the door. My primary care doctor, Aldrich, ran blood work. Everything came back within normal range. "You're 68, Walter," he said. "Sun fatigue is expected. Make sure you're getting light, getting outside, staying social." He said it gently, the way doctors do when they don't have an answer but want to sound useful. I started walking every morning, down Morse Road and back about 2 miles. Sometimes I'd stop at the diner on the corner, place called Lou's, been there since 1974, and have coffee and read the sports page. The waitress there, woman named Peggy, started recognizing me. Started having my coffee ready when she saw me come through the door. It's a small thing. But when you live alone, small things become enormous. The walks helped for about 3 weeks. Then the dizziness started. It would come on without warning. I'd be standing at the kitchen counter making a sandwich, and suddenly the linoleum would seem to tilt. I'd grab the counter, hold on, wait for it to pass. Once I knocked a glass off the shelf and spent 10 minutes on my hands and knees picking up pieces because I didn't trust myself to stand up straight. Elliot called 3 times a day by April. "Dad, the air quality sensors show everything normal, but I want you to see a specialist." Diane found a really well-regarded neurologist at Vanderbilt. "We could drive you down." I told him I wasn't driving to Nashville to see a doctor. He pushed. I said I'd find someone local. I should have found someone local. Instead, I let him talk me into it. We drove down the second week of April. Elliot's house in Nashville is one of those new construction colonials, all open floor plan and quartz countertops. Everything in it feels expensive and nothing in it feels like anyone actually lives there. My grandkids, Owen, who's 10, and Lily, who's 7, were sweet with me. Owen showed me a project he was building with Legos. Lily made me a drawing of a dog. I put it in my coat pocket and it's still there, in a box in my closet now. The neurologist was a man named Dr. Forsyth. Efficient, measured, the kind of doctor who delivers information like he's reading from a report. He ran cognitive tests, coordination assessments, and ordered an MRI. When he called me back in for the results, he folded his hands on his desk and said, "Mr. Crane, I want to be honest with you. There are some patterns here that concern me. I'd like to start you on a medication protocol." He said it could be early-stage vascular dementia, or it could be something else. He wasn't sure yet, but wanted to be proactive. I sat in that office and thought something I hadn't felt since the morning the hospital called about Carol. That specific kind of dread, the one that tells you the ground is shifting and you can't stop it. He wrote me a prescription. Capsules, twice a day with food. I filled it at the pharmacy 2 blocks from Elliot's house. Diane was waiting outside in the car. When I got in, she said, "Elliot will be so relieved you're finally taking this seriously." I noticed she didn't ask me how I was feeling. I stayed 4 days. Elliot and Diane were attentive in a way that made me uneasy without knowing why. She kept offering to help me sort out my finances, since things must be so complicated after losing Carol. I told her my finances were sorted just fine, thank you. She laughed it off and offered me more coffee. On my 3rd night there, I woke at 2 a.m. with my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I sat up in the guest room and just breathed, in through the nose, out through the mouth, the way the cardiologist told me years ago. I looked around the room. Unfamiliar furniture, pale curtain light from the street lamp, and on the nightstand they brought an air purifier from home. My air purifier? Elliot had packed it for the trip. "So you'd sleep well," he'd said. It was running. The lavender scent was in the air. I don't know why, but I reached over and unplugged it. That night, for the first time in months, I slept until 6. I went back to Columbus 2 days later and didn't plug the purifier back in. I told myself it was just that I wanted fresh air. I told myself lots of things. Something shifted. Without the purifier running, my head started to clear. Slowly, the way fog whiffs on a cold morning. Not all at once, but in patches. The headaches were less frequent. I was still tired, still dizzy sometimes. But there were hours, then half-days, where I felt almost like myself. I started to notice a pattern. The worst mornings were always after nights I'd left the unit on in the bedroom. The better mornings followed nights I hadn't. I didn't tell Elliot. I called a man I'd worked with for years at the city, a fellow named Ray Kowalski, who'd retired 2 years before me and now spent his time doing what retired engineers do, fixing things that didn't need fixing and reading too much online. I told him what I'd been experiencing, the symptoms, the timeline, the purifier. I asked him if he thought I was being paranoid. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Walt, let me make some calls." Ray called me back 3 days later. He'd reached out to a former colleague who now consulted for the EPA's Indoor Air Quality Division. That colleague had heard of cases, not common, but not unheard of, where modified consumer air purifiers had been used to disperse chemical compounds. Some involved ultrasonic diffusers modified to carry compounds that accumulated slowly in an enclosed space. Low concentrations mimicked neurological decline. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the wall for a long time after that call. I thought about Carol's life insurance policy, $600,000. I thought about the house, which an appraiser had told me last fall was worth close to $400,000 in today's market. I thought about my city pension and the 403(b) I'd been contributing to for 3 decades. I thought about Elliot's business, which he'd mentioned was going through a rough patch. I thought about Diane saying the word finances at dinner like she was tasting it. I almost talked myself out of it. This was my son who used to fall asleep on my chest when he was 3 weeks old. My son who called me crying from college when his first girlfriend broke up with him. My son who stood beside me at Carol's funeral and held my arm when my legs almost went. But I thought about that guest room, my purifier packed and brought along, running while I slept. I bought a home air quality analyzer online, basic model, about $60. It arrived in 2 days. I set it up in the living room and let it run for 48 hours with the purifier off. Readings were normal. Then I plugged the purifier back in, ran it for 6 hours, and tested again. The VOC reading, volatile organic compounds, had tripled. The specific compounds the analyzer flagged weren't ones that should be in a lavender-eucalyptus blend. I screenshot everything, sent the images to Ray. Ray's EPA contact said what I was looking at was consistent with a class of sedative compounds sometimes used in research settings. Cumulative exposure over months could cause fatigue, cognitive impairment, dizziness, and cardiac irregularities. It would not show up in standard blood work. It would look from the outside exactly like the early stages of neurological decline. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Carol's reading chair, the one she loved, the green one by the window, and I thought about what to do. I thought about calling Elliot and asking him directly. I thought about how he would sound, hurt, confused. "Dad, what are you even saying?" And I thought, maybe I am wrong. Maybe this is grief and isolation doing something terrible to my mind. Maybe I have become paranoid. But then I thought about Owen's Lego project, about Lily's drawing of the dog, about who would take care of them if both their parents were in prison. I called a lawyer. Then I called the Columbus Police Department and asked to speak with someone in the Financial Crimes Unit. Then I called my financial advisor and told him to freeze any accounts that required my signature, and to note that no power of attorney had been granted to anyone under any circumstances. After that, I called Elliot. I kept my voice tired and confused because it wasn't entirely an act. "Son," I said, "I think I need help. I had a bad episode last night. I'm scared. I don't think I should be alone anymore." I heard something in his voice when I said that. A kind of careful stillness, the way someone gets when something they've been waiting for finally arrives. "Dad? Okay. Okay, we're going to figure this out. Diane and I will drive up this weekend. We can talk about next steps." "That would mean so much to me," I said. He told me he loved me. I told him I loved him too, and I meant it. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. It doesn't stop you from loving the person. It just means you're holding two impossible things at once, and neither of them will let go. When Elliot and Diane pulled into my driveway that Saturday morning, two plainclothes detectives from the Columbus PD were parked across the street. A forensic environmental specialist was already at a lab in Guyana with the Purifier and a month's worth of documentation. My lawyer was on standby. I watched from the front window as they got out of the car. Elliot was carrying a messenger bag. Diane had a folder under her arm. I later found out it was a draft power of attorney document, already filled out with my name, already prepared for my signature. The detectives met them at the end of the driveway. I watched my son's face change when he saw them. That careful, practiced calm he'd been carrying for months just fell away. Like a wall that had been leaning at an angle, finally gives and drops. Diane stepped back and said something I couldn't hear through the glass. Elliot just stood there, frozen in the driveway of the house he grew up in. He looked up toward the window, found me there. I don't know what he expected to see. Maybe he expected me to look angry? Or triumphant? I didn't feel either of those things. I felt like I was watching someone I'd known my whole life through water, close and distorted and very far away. The investigation took 7 months. The evidence came together the way evidence does when there's a lot of it, methodically, each piece connecting to the next. The air purifier had been modified by a vendor Diane had located through an online forum, not a Chinese manufacturer this time, but a private seller operating out of Arizona with a client list that turned out to include 4 other cases under investigation in 3 states. The capsules Dr. Forsythe had prescribed were legitimate medication, but Elliot had been swapping them out, filling identical capsules with a compound ordered through the same channel. The life insurance policy, taken out on my life 8 months earlier with Elliot as sole beneficiary without my knowledge, was the piece that sealed the conspiracy charge. Diane's phone contained 18 months of texts. She had been the architect of most of it. Elliot had followed. I don't say that to excuse him. Weakness is still a choice. But the prosecutor told me, off the record, that in her experience, it was rare for someone to construct a plan this methodical without a particular kind of mind driving it. Diane had that mind. Elliot got 18 years. Attempted murder in the first degree, criminal conspiracy, elder financial abuse under Ohio revised code, a felony enhancement that added 4 years to the base sentence. Diane got 22. She had orchestrated. The jury didn't find much room for sympathy. Dr. Forsythe was investigated. His prescribing records were clean. He'd been deceived the same way I was, given fraudulent background information that made my symptoms appear consistent with his diagnosis. He was cleared. I don't hold anything against him. Owen and Lily went to Diane's sister in Knoxville, a decent woman who I'd met twice at family gatherings and who called me after the sentencing to say she was sorry. I told her to take care of the kids. I told her they were innocent of everything, and I meant it. I send them birthday cards. I send Owen books about engineering. I sent Lily colored pencils because she likes to draw. I don't know what they've been told, but I hope someone is telling them something true and something kind, and that those two things don't have to be opposites. My environmental test results showed the VOC exposure had caused measurable inflammation in my lung tissue and what my pulmonologist described as chemically induced cognitive disruption. It was not permanent. The brain is more resilient than you'd think. Within 3 months of clean air and the right support, most of my symptoms resolved. My memory steadied. The dizziness stopped. I threw the medication in the garbage the same day I called the police and never took another capsule. I still go to Lou's Diner most mornings. Peggy still has my coffee ready when she sees me come through the door. I told her a little of what happened. Not everything, just enough. And she listened the way good people do, without interrupting or offering easy comfort. Then she refilled my cup and said, "Well, you're still here. That was exactly the right thing to say. There's a woman in my neighborhood, a retired schoolteacher named Barbara, who lost her husband 3 years ago. We started talking at the community garden last spring. She grows tomatoes, and I grow nothing, but I showed up because Ray's wife suggested it, and I was tired of my own company." Barbara talks about her husband the way I talk about Carol, in the present tense sometimes, like they just stepped out of the room for a moment. We go to the farmer's market on Saturdays. Sometimes we get breakfast after. Nothing complicated, just company and conversation, and the ordinary comfort of someone who understands that grief doesn't end. It just learns to share the space. The air purifier is sitting in an evidence locker somewhere in Franklin County. Good. I hope it stays there. I bought a new one. Nothing smart about it. No app, no remote monitoring, no digital display. Just a filter and a fan. It does one thing. It cleans the air. No one can access it from Nashville. No one knows when it's running. It's mine. I think about Elliot sometimes. I think about the kid who fell asleep on my chest. The teenager who couldn't parallel park and practiced in the church parking lot on Sunday mornings until he got it right. The young man who called me when he got his first real job, and I could hear in his voice that he wanted me to be proud. I was proud of him. I still don't know what to do with that. What I know is this: I'm still here. I still walk Morse Road in the mornings. I still drink too much coffee and read the sports page and talk to Peggy about the Buckeyes. I still sleep in the house Carol and I bought in 1991. With her reading glasses on the nightstand and a new grocery list on the fridge in my handwriting now. The damage healed. The silence didn't go away, but it got a little less empty. If you're watching this from somewhere, from your kitchen or your bedroom or a chair you sat in so many times it has the shape of you, I want you to hear this. Pay attention to what's changing in your body. Pay attention to gifts that come with conditions attached. Ask questions about the things people tell you are for your own good, and trust the part of you that says something isn't right, even when you can't prove it yet. Especially then. I'm Walter Crane. I'm 69 years old. I'm a retired civil engineer. I'm a widower. I'm a grandfather who sends birthday cards to children who may not fully understand why I'm not at their birthday parties. I survived something I never should have had to survive inside the walls of my own family. But I'm still here, and I intend to stay. I keep thinking about the air purifier, how quiet it was, how it sat in the corner of my living room for months, humming, smelling like lavender, and I thanked my son for it. I told him it helped me sleep, and it did. That was the cruelest part. It worked exactly as designed, just not the way I thought. There's a version of this story where I never unplug it, where I keep trusting the way a father trusts, unconditionally, the way I was built to trust Elliot from the moment I held him in that hospital. In that version, I'm probably gone by now. My house sold, my pension folded into whatever deal he and Diane had planned. My name on a headstone in a cemetery in Westerville, while my grandkids grow up not knowing what really happened to their grandfather. What saved me wasn't luck. I want to be clear about that. What saved me was paying attention, slowly, imperfectly, against every instinct that told me I was being paranoid. My body was sending signals for months, and I kept explaining them away. The headaches, The fatigue, the mornings I couldn't think straight. I told myself I was grieving. I told myself I was getting old. Both of those things were true. But something else was also true, and eventually I couldn't ignore it anymore. That's the thing about integrity, your own internal integrity, the honesty you owe yourself before you owe it to anyone else. I had to stop being polite to my own doubts. I had to let myself think the unthinkable, sit with it, and then do something about it instead of talking myself out of it because the truth was too painful. Choosing comfort over clarity nearly cost me everything. And then there's Ray, a retired engineer who made phone calls on my behalf because I asked him if I was being paranoid, and he took the question seriously. He didn't dismiss me. He didn't say, "That's your son, Walter. Come on." He thought about it like an engineer thinks about a failing structure. What are the data points? What do they suggest? What do we check next? That kind of clear thinking, applied at the right moment, is worth more than I can say. What Elliot and Diane did will follow them for the rest of their lives. Not because I wanted that. I didn't. I wanted a son who called me because he missed me, not because he was monitoring the progress of my decline. But choices accumulate. The small ones and the large ones. Every text Diane sent, every capsule Elliot swapped, every visit where they smiled at me and asked if I was comfortable. Those choices stacked up into something that couldn't be undone. That's not punishment handed down by anyone. That's just the weight of what you build with your own hands. I'm still here. I walk Morse Road. I drink coffee at Lou's. I send Owen books about engineering because I want him to know that the world can be understood, that problems can be solved, that a man who pays careful attention and refuses to give up is harder to break than anyone expects. That's what I want him to inherit from me. Not the house, not the pension. That